The small diplomatic shuttle Harmony drifted peacefully through the void between star systems, its hull gleaming with the soft blue and silver insignia of the United Earth Cultural Exchange Program. Inside the cramped but comfortable cabin, Zephyr Nocturne adjusted her ceremonial robes for what felt like the 100th time, her fingers trembling slightly with nervous energy. At 28, Zephyr had already mastered 17 languages, including 3 alien dialects from previous first contact missions. Her auburn hair was braided with traditional earth flowers, a gesture of peace and beauty that had proven successful in past diplomatic encounters. But this mission felt different. The Krellian Empire had agreed to meet only after months of careful negotiations through intermediary species, and even then, they had insisted on meeting in neutral space. Approaching the rendezvous coordinates, announced her pilot, Marcus Rivers, from the cockpit. His voice carried none of the excitement that bubbled in Zephyr's chest. Marcus was practical, experienced, and slightly skeptical of the whole endeavor. Still no sign of the Krellian vessel. Zephyr moved to the observation port, gazing out at the star-filled darkness. Somewhere out there, representatives of a species that had never directly communicated with humans were preparing for this historic moment. Her heart raced with anticipation. This was why she had dedicated her life to xenolinguistics and cultural exchange. These precious moments when two civilizations reached across the cosmic void to touch minds and hearts. There, she whispered, pointing to a shimmer in space that gradually resolved into a massive vessel. The Krellian ship was unlike anything in human records organic. Curves blended with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with internal light. It was beautiful in an alien way that made her breath catch. "That's not a diplomatic vessel," Marcus muttered, checking his instruments. "That's a warship. A big one." Before Zephyr could respond, the Harmony shuddered as an invisible force seized it. The stars outside the viewport began to move as they were drawn toward the Krellian vessel's docking bay. Emergency lights flashed red in the shuttle's cabin. "They're pulling us in with some kind of tractor field," Marcus reported, his hands flying over the controls. "I can't break free." "Wait," Zephyr said, placing a calming hand on his shoulder. "Maybe this is part of their protocol. Different species have different approaches to first contact." The shuttle settled with a gentle thump inside the alien vessel's bay. Through the viewport, Zephyr could see the docking area filled with beings that matched the limited descriptions they had received. The Krellians were tall, easily 7 feet in height, with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to shift between pale silver and deep blue. Their faces were angular, almost sculpture-like, with large eyes that glowed with internal light. "They're beautiful," Zephyr breathed, her diplomatic training kicking in as she observed their graceful movements and elegant bearing. The airlock cycled open, and 3 Krellians approached. The one in the center wore robes that seemed woven from starlight itself, while the 2 flanking him were clearly guards, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. But it was their leader who captured Zephyr's attention completely. He was magnificent tall, even by Krellian standards, with silver-blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the bay's artificial light. His hair was a cascade of deep midnight blue, and his eyes held an intelligence and depth that made her heart skip. When he spoke, his voice was like music, though the words were in a language she didn't recognize. "I am Cultural Attached Zephyr Nocturne of Earth," she said in the most formal Krellian dialect she had studied, bowing in what she hoped was an appropriate gesture. "I come in peace, seeking understanding between our peoples." The beautiful alien's eyes widened slightly at hearing his language from human lips. He exchanged rapid words with his companions, then stepped closer. When he spoke again, it was in accented but clear English. "You speak our ceremonial tongue. This is ... unexpected." His voice sent shivers down Zephyr's spine. "I am Prince Orion Stellaris of the 3rd Royal House. You were expected to be primitive beings, yet you demonstrate linguistic capability. Primitive? Zephyr blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, there seems to be some misunderstanding. We're here for diplomatic talks, cultural exchange. Prince Orion's expression grew cold, though something flickered in his luminous eyes that might have been regret. There has been no misunderstanding, human. Your species has been observed. Your warlike nature, your destruction of your own world's ecosystems, your constant conflicts, these mark you as a dangerous primitive race that requires guidance. Guidance? Marcus stepped forward protectively, but Zephyr held up a hand to stop him. Please, Your Highness, she said, using the formal address she hoped would show respect. If you've been observing us, surely you've also seen our art, our music, our capacity for love and growth. We've come here specifically because we want to learn from other species, to grow beyond our past mistakes. Prince Orion studied her with those captivating eyes, and for a moment something soft crossed his features. Then his expression hardened again. You will both be confined while we decide your fate. Consider yourselves fortunate that Krellian honor requires proper treatment of prisoners. Prisoners? Zephyr's voice rose in dismay. But we came here in peace. The negotiations were arranged through the Altarian Republic. This was supposed to be a cultural exchange. The Altarians are known to interfere where they should not, Prince Orion replied, though his voice seemed less certain now. They often attempt to protect species that are not ready for contact with advanced civilizations. 2 guards stepped forward to escort them, but Zephyr stood her ground. Your Highness, please. Give me a chance to prove that we're not what you think we are. Let me show you our culture, our true nature. Judge us not by our worst moments, but by our capacity to become better. For a long moment, Prince Orion stared at her. In his alien features, she could see a war between duty and something else, curiosity, perhaps, or the faintest stirring of attraction. Finally, he spoke to the guards in Krellian, then turned back to her. You will be given quarters appropriate to your status as cultural representatives, not prisoners, he said formally. But you will not be permitted to leave this vessel until proper evaluation can be completed. As the guards, now clearly escorts rather than captors, led them through corridors that seemed to be carved from living crystal, Zephyr caught Prince Orion watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was something in those luminous eyes that made her pulse quicken, something that suggested this unexpected encounter might lead to discoveries neither of their species had anticipated. The quarters they were assigned were surprisingly comfortable, with chambers that seemed to respond to their presence by adjusting light and temperature. Marcus immediately began examining the walls for possible escape routes, but Zephyr found herself drawn to the large viewing port that showed the stars beyond. This isn't what we planned for, Marcus said grimly. We should find a way to contact Earth. Let them know the situation. I don't think we're in immediate danger, Zephyr replied, though her mind was racing. Prince Orion. There was something in his manner. He's not convinced about their assessment of humanity. He seemed pretty convinced to me. Did you miss the part where he called us primitive and dangerous? Zephyr turned from the viewport, her eyes bright with determination. Then I'll have to show him otherwise. If they've been observing us from a distance, they've only seen surface behaviors. They don't understand the depth of human emotion, our capacity for growth, our ability to love. Zephyr, Marcus warned, don't get romantic ideas about the alien prince. He just captured us, but Zephyr was already planning. If Prince Orion was willing to observe and evaluate, then she would give him something worth seeing. She would show him not just human culture and achievements, but the beating heart of what made humanity beautiful. And perhaps, in doing so, she might discover that the vast distance between stars was nothing compared to the space between two hearts, learning to understand each other. Outside their quarters, she could hear the soft harmonics of Krellian voices as the crew went about their duties. Somewhere among them was Prince Orion, grappling with unexpected complexities that one human woman had introduced into his ordered universe. Neither of them yet realized that this chance encounter would transform not just their own hearts, but the destiny of both their peoples. Prince Orion Stellaris stood in his private chambers aboard the starship Celestial Dawn, staring at the holographic reports floating before him like luminescent butterflies. Each data stream contained observations about humanity gathered over months of careful surveillance, yet none of it seemed to explain the woman who had spoken his ceremonial language with such grace. The prince's quarters reflected his royal status walls that shifted between deep sapphire and silver, like captured starlight, furniture that seemed to grow from the floor in organic curves, and a viewport that offered a commanding view of the cosmos. But tonight, even the beauty of a nearby nebula couldn't distract him from thoughts of auburn hair and defiant green eyes. "You're troubled, my prince," came a melodious voice from the entrance. Orion turned to see his closest friend and advisor, Vesper Moonwhisper, gliding into the room. Her silver hair flowed like liquid mercury, and her knowing smile suggested she already understood the source of his distraction. "The human prisoners present complications I didn't anticipate," Orion replied, though he couldn't quite meet her perceptive gaze. In Krellian society, emotional transparency was valued, but what he felt when looking at the human woman defied easy explanation. Vesper settled gracefully onto the curved seating area, her robes arranging themselves with practiced elegance. "You mean the female who speaks our ancient tongue? Zephyr, wasn't it? Such a beautiful name, like the gentle winds that caress our home, world's crystal gardens. She shouldn't be able to speak our language at all," Orion said, finally turning from the viewport. "Our intelligence indicated that humans are barely capable of interstellar communication, yet she demonstrates linguistic sophistication that rivals our own scholars. Perhaps our intelligence was incomplete," Vesper suggested gently. "It wouldn't be the first time the Royal Council underestimated a species." Orion began pacing, a habit that emerged when his carefully ordered world encountered unexpected variables. "That's what troubles me. If we're wrong about their linguistic capabilities, what else might we be wrong about?" The prince paused at his personal library, where crystals containing the wisdom of dozens of civilizations glowed softly. He had spent years studying other species, understanding their cultures and psychology. It was part of what made him an effective diplomatic envoy for the Krellian Empire. Yet nothing in his studies had prepared him for the way his pulse quickened when the human woman had looked directly into his eyes. "You could speak with her again," Vesper suggested, her tone carefully neutral. "Additional observation might resolve your ... concerns. Would that be wise?" Orion asked, though part of him had been hoping she would suggest exactly that. "She's clearly attempting to manipulate our perceptions of her species." Vesper's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "My dear prince, since when do you fear manipulation from someone you consider primitive? Unless ... She let the thought hang in the air like a question. "Unless what?" "Unless you don't truly believe she's primitive at all." Orion was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. In Krellian culture, attraction was seen as a form of recognition, the soul acknowledging excellence in another being. But attraction to an alien species, particularly one considered inferior by the Royal Council, would create complications beyond measure. "She spoke of love," he said finally. "When I told her humans were observed to be warlike and destructive, she asked if we had also observed their capacity for love. It was such an unexpected response. Love is not uncommon among the species we've encountered," Vesper pointed out, "though each expresses it differently. But the way she said it ... double quotes, Orion struggled to find words. There was something in her voice, in her expression, as if love wasn't just an emotion for humans, but a force capable of transformation." His friend studied him with ancient wisdom despite her relatively young age. Perhaps you should discover what she meant. 2 hours later, Orion found himself walking through the corridors toward the guest quarters, his heart beating with an irregular rhythm that would have concerned a medic. He had changed from his formal robes into simpler attire, though it was still crafted from the finest materials available to Krellian royalty. When the door chimed his presence, it was Zephyr herself who answered, not her companion. She had somehow transformed the standard guest robes into something that complemented her human beauty, and her hair was now loose around her shoulders like autumn fire. "Your Highness," she said, offering the same respectful bow she had given in the docking bay. "I wasn't expecting you. I found myself curious about your earlier statements," Orion replied, proud that his voice remained steady despite the way her presence affected him. "You spoke of human capacity for love. I would understand what you meant." Her face brightened with genuine pleasure, and Orion felt something warm unfurl in his chest. "Would you like to come in? I was just reviewing some of our cultural archives on my personal device. Perhaps I could show you." The quarters seemed smaller with both of them inside, though the Krellian designers had intended them to be spacious. Orion found himself very aware of her proximity as she gestured for him to sit beside her at the viewing screen. "This is one of my favorite pieces of human art," she said, activating a display that showed a painting of two figures embracing against a starry sky. It was created over 300 years ago by an artist named Van Gogh. He painted it while struggling with loneliness and mental illness, yet he was able to create something that speaks of connection and hope. Orion studied the image, noting the way the swirling stars seemed to echo the emotional intensity of the embracing figures. "It's beautiful," he admitted. "But what does this have to do with love's transformative power?" Zephyr's smile was radiant. Van Gogh was considered a failure during his lifetime. He was poor, often hungry, frequently mocked. But his love for art, for beauty, for the possibility of human connection, transformed his pain into something eternal. This painting has brought comfort to millions of humans across the centuries. She shifted the display to show other images lovers throughout human history. Families supporting each other through hardship. Strangers helping strangers in times of crisis. Each image was accompanied by her soft narration, explaining the context and the emotions involved. "Love doesn't just exist between romantic partners for humans," she explained. "We love our families, our friends, our ideals, even our enemies sometimes. It's the force that drives us to become better than we were." "Your companion, Marcus," Orion said carefully. "Is he your mate?" Zephyr laughed, and the sound made Orion's skin tingle. "No, Marcus is my friend and colleague. We've worked together for years, and I trust him completely, but our relationship isn't romantic." "Then you have no mate?" She turned to look at him directly, and Orion felt caught in the depths of her green eyes. "No, Your Highness. I've been so focused on my work, on learning about other cultures and languages, that I haven't had time for romance. Though, double quotes, she hesitated, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. "Though what?" "Though I've always believed that love might be even more powerful when it bridges different worlds, different ways of thinking. The challenge of understanding someone truly different from yourself, of finding common ground across vast differences, it seems like it could create something extraordinary." Orion felt his breath catch. Was she speaking hypothetically, or was there something more personal in her words? The way she was looking at him suggested depths he hadn't expected from any human, let alone one his people considered primitive. "In Krellian culture," he said carefully, "we believe that attraction is a form of recognition, the soul acknowledging excellence in another being." "That's beautiful," Zephyr whispered. "What happens when a Krellian feels that recognition?" "Traditionally, it leads to bonding ceremonies that unite not just individuals, but families and sometimes entire houses." He paused, then added with unprecedented honesty, though such recognition has never been recorded between a Krellian and an alien species. Never? Never. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Finally, Zephyr spoke again. "Your Highness, may I ask you something personal?" "You may ask. When you look at me, what do you see? Truly?" Orion considered the question with the gravity it deserved. When he answered, his voice was softer than before, more vulnerable. "When I first saw you, I expected to see a primitive being, perhaps interesting as a curiosity, but ultimately inferior. Instead, he struggled for words. Instead, I see intelligence that challenges my assumptions, grace that rivals our finest dancers, beauty that follows completely different patterns from Krellian aesthetics, yet somehow affects me more profoundly than any I've known. And in your eyes, what do you see in my eyes?" "Depth," he said simply. "The kind of depth that suggests your people might be capable of far more than our observations indicated." Zephyr leaned closer, and Orion caught a scent that was uniquely human, yet somehow peeling warm and alive in a way that Krellian fragrances weren't. "And when I look at you, Your Highness, I see someone who's struggling between what he's been taught to believe and what he's discovering for himself. That's a dangerous observation," Orion warned, though without heat. "The best discoveries usually are dangerous," she replied with a smile that made his heart's "yes," both of them skip in rhythm. Before either could say more, Marcus emerged from the sleeping chamber, pausing when he saw them sitting so close together. "Zephyr, everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Marcus," she assured him, though she didn't move away from Orion. His Highness was just learning about human concepts of love. Marcus's expression suggested he understood exactly what kind of learning was taking place, and he wasn't entirely comfortable with it. But he simply nodded and returned to the other room, leaving them alone again. "I should go," Orion said, though he made no move to leave. "My presence here might be misinterpreted." "By whom?" "By my advisors, by the Royal Council, by anyone who believes that Krellians should maintain proper distance from species under evaluation." Zephyr reached out slowly, telegraphing her intention, and gently touched his hand. The contact sent electricity through his entire nervous system, and he stared down at their joined fingers in wonder. "What if the evaluation is wrong?" she asked softly. "What if the distance between our species isn't as vast as everyone believes?" Orion looked up to meet her gaze, and in that moment, he realized that his carefully ordered world had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more interesting. "Then," he said, turning his hand to intertwine their fingers properly, "we might need to discover just how small that distance really is." When he finally left her quarters an hour later, Prince Orion Stellaris carried with him the memory of green eyes full of starlight, the warmth of human touch, and the dangerous, exhilarating possibility that everything he thought he knew about the universe might be wrong. Luna Brightness pressed her palms against the cool surface of the reconnaissance ship's view screen, watching the Krellian vessel grow larger as they approached under stealth conditions. At 31, she was one of Earth's most accomplished xenobiologists, but today she felt the weight of an impossible mission: rescue Zephyr and Marcus without starting an interstellar war. Thermal readings show approximately 200 life forms aboard that ship, reported her pilot, Tobias Storm, his fingers dancing across the control interface. Most concentrated in the central sections, but there are smaller heat signatures in what look like guest quarters. "That's probably where they're being held," Luna murmured, though something about the situation didn't feel right. In her years studying alien behavior patterns, she had learned to trust her instincts, and right now they were telling her that this was far more complicated than a simple prisoner rescue. Behind her, the rest of her small team prepared their equipment with quiet efficiency. Dr. Finn Blackwater, their cultural psychologist, was reviewing everything they knew about Krellian social structures. Elena Starburn, their communications expert, monitored all frequencies for any sign of distress calls from the captured shuttle. And Ante Nightfall, their security specialist, checked weapons that everyone hoped they wouldn't need to use. "Luna," Elena called softly, "I'm picking up something strange on the Krellian communication channels." "What kind of strange?" "It sounds like conversations about human cultural achievements. They're discussing art, music, something about linguistic capabilities." Elena frowned at her instruments. "This doesn't sound like interrogation chatter." Dr. Blackwater looked up from his files, his weathered face creasing with concern. "That could indicate they're trying to understand human psychology before proceeding with whatever they have planned." But Luna felt that familiar tingle of intuition again. Or it could mean something else entirely. "Tobias, can you get us closer without triggering their sensors?" "I can park us in the shadow of that asteroid cluster," he replied. "Close enough for a boarding pod insertion, far enough to avoid immediate detection." As their ship maneuvered into position, Luna found herself thinking about Zephyr. They had been friends since university, bonding over late-night study sessions about alien cultures and dreams of peaceful first contact. Zephyr had always believed that love and understanding could bridge any gap between species, while Luna took a more scientific approach to xenobiology. Now one of them was trapped aboard an alien vessel, and Luna was beginning to wonder if her friend's romantic idealism might have gotten her into serious trouble. "Thermal imaging shows 2 figures in the target quarters," Dante reported as he suited up for the insertion. "Both appear unharmed and moving normally." "Good," Luna said, though she couldn't shake her unease. "Remember, this is extraction only. We get in, get out. No heroics, no cultural exchanges, no attempts to make friends with the aliens." "Understood," the team responded in unison, though Dr. Blackwater looked like he wanted to object to the no cultural exchanges part. Boarding pod launched silently from their ship, using microthrusters to navigate through the asteroid field toward the Krellian vessel. Luna's heart pounded as they approached the hull, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether this became a rescue mission or the opening shots of a war. "Hull breach in 3.2.1. Dante whispered, as his plasma cutter made a Zephyr-sized hole in the alien ship's outer skin. Atmosphere rushed out briefly before emergency systems sealed the breach behind them. And suddenly Luna found herself inside an alien vessel for the first time in her career. The corridors were breathtaking. Curved walls seemed to pulse with gentle bioluminescence, and the air itself felt different, richer somehow, filled with harmonious frequencies that made her skin tingle. Despite the danger, the scientist in her was fascinated. "This way," she whispered, following the thermal readings toward the guest quarters. But as they moved through the ship, Luna began to notice something odd about the Krellian crew members they glimpsed. They moved with purpose, but not urgency, and their postures suggested curiosity rather than hostility. When they finally reached the Chi corridor leading to Zephyr's location, Luna held up a hand to stop her team. Through a translucent section of wall, she could see into the guest quarters, and what she saw made her breath catch. Zephyr was sitting close to a tall, elegant Krellian male, their heads bent together over some kind of display device. They were actually laughing at something on the screen. Even more shocking, their hands were intertwined, fingers laced together in a gesture of unmistakable intimacy. "Well," Dr. Blackwater whispered beside her, "that's not what I expected to see." Luna felt a confusing mix of relief, concern, and something that might have been envy as she watched her friend's face glow with happiness. This wasn't the expression of someone being held prisoner. This was the expression of someone falling in love. "We need to get closer," she murmured, activating her suit's recording equipment. "I need to understand what's happening here before we do anything irreversible." They moved carefully along the corridor until they could hear voices through the walls. The conversation was in English, and Luna's translator was picking up the Krellian's words with surprising clarity. ... Your species? Concept of music is fascinating, the alien was saying in a voice like liquid silver. This jazz form seems to celebrate imperfection and spontaneity in ways our formal compositions do not. That's exactly right, Zephyr replied, and Luna could hear the excitement in her friend's voice. Jazz is about finding beauty in the unexpected, making something wonderful from things that shouldn't work together, but somehow do. Like us, the Krellian said softly. Like us. Zephyr agreed. Luna felt her chest tighten with emotion she couldn't quite name. Behind her, she sensed her team's similar confusion as they processed what they were witnessing. Luna, Elena whispered through their comm system. I'm detecting elevated biometric readings from both subjects. Heart rate, skin temperature, neurological activity, all consistent with romantic attachment. That's impossible, Dante murmured. She's been captive for less than 2 standard days. But Dr. Blackwater was nodding slowly. Actually, intense situations can accelerate emotional bonding significantly. Add in the exotic appeal of first contact with a beautiful alien. And ... double quotes. He trailed off with a shrug. Luna made a decision that went against every protocol she'd been taught. Instead of proceeding with the extraction, she activated her suit's external speakers and called out in her most non-threatening voice. Zephyr? It's Luna. We're here to help. The conversation inside the quarters stopped immediately. Luna heard rapid movement, and Zephyr's voice tinged with both relief and concern. Luna? How did you... Are you all right? Are you here to rescue us? That was the plan, Luna replied honestly. But I'm getting the impression that rescue might not be necessary. There was a long pause. Then the door to the quarters opened. Zephyr appeared, still wearing modified Krellian robes, her hair loose and her face radiant with happiness. Behind her stood the most beautiful alien Luna had ever seen tall, elegant, with skin that shifted between silver and blue, and eyes that held depths of intelligence and kindness. Luna, Zephyr said carefully, I'd like you to meet Prince Orion Stellaris of the Krellian Empire. Orion, this is my dearest friend and colleague, Luna Brightness. Prince Orion stepped forward, and to Luna's amazement offered a perfect human-style bow. Dr. Brightness, he said in accented English, Zephyr has told me much about your work in xenobiology. I am honored to meet such a distinguished scholar. Luna found herself returning the bow automatically, her scientific mind cataloging every detail of this unprecedented first contact, even as her emotions reeled. The honor is mine, Your Highness. Though I have to admit, this isn't quite the scenario we prepared for. I imagine not, Prince Orion replied with what looked like an alien approximation of a smile. First contact rarely proceeds according to anyone's expectations. Where's Marcus? Luna asked, finally remembering her other responsibility, sleeping off a mild concussion from our rather dramatic arrival. Zephyr replied, The Krellian medical team has been taking excellent care of him. Luna, they're not holding us prisoner. This has all been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? Prince Orion and Zephyr exchanged a look that was so intimate it made Luna's chest ache with longing she didn't expect to feel. Kind that happens when two species make assumptions about each other without taking the time to truly understand, Prince Orion said. We believed humans to be primitive and dangerous. You believed us to be hostile captors. Both assumptions were incomplete. More than incomplete, Zephyr added, her eyes never leaving the prince's face. They were barriers preventing us from seeing what could be possible between our peoples. Luna's trained eye cataloged the micro-expressions, the body language, the way they unconsciously leaned toward each other. Her friend wasn't just attracted to this alien prince. She was genuinely, deeply in love with him. And from his posture and the way his luminous eyes tracked Zephyr's every movement, the feeling was mutual. "This complicates things," Luna said finally. "How so?" Prince Orion asked. "Because," Dr. Blackwater interjected, stepping forward to join the conversation, "both of our species' governments are probably preparing for the worst-case scenario right now. Rescue ships, battle fleets, diplomatic crisis, all because of a misunderstanding." Zephyr's face paled. "Luna, you have to contact Earth. Tell them what's really happening here. If they send warships ... it would validate every concern my people have about human aggressiveness." Prince Orion finished grimly. "The Royal Council would interpret military response as proof that humans cannot be trusted with peaceful contact." Luna felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Two civilizations balanced on the edge of either wonderful discovery or tragic conflict. And somehow the decision had fallen to her. She looked at her friend's face, glowing with happiness and hope, then at the alien prince who gazed at Zephyr like she was the most precious thing in the universe. "Elena," she said into her comm, "open a channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha." "Luna, what are you doing?" Dante asked nervously. "What Zephyr would do," Luna replied with a smile. "I'm choosing to believe in the power of love to change the world. Or in this case, two worlds." As Elena established the communication link, Luna realized that she was about to become part of the most important conversation in human history. And it was all because her romantic, idealistic friend had done the impossible. She had made an alien prince fall in love with humanity itself. Earth Command. "This is Dr. Luna Brightness on urgent diplomatic priority," she said when the channel opened. "I need to speak to the Secretary of Interstellar Affairs immediately. We have a situation that requires immediate diplomatic intervention, not military response." "Luna," Zephyr whispered, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Luna replied, watching as Prince Orion gently took her friend's hand. "We still have to convince both our governments that love is stronger than fear. And honestly, that might be the biggest challenge any of our species has ever faced." But as she watched, the way the alien prince looked at her human friend, Luna found herself believing that, maybe, just maybe, love really could bridge the vast distances between stars. And perhaps, in helping her friend protect this impossible romance, she might discover something about the nature of love that her scientific training had never taught her. After all, Gahart, she was learning, followed laws far more mysterious and powerful than anything she had studied in her years of xenobiology. And sometimes those laws could change the fate of entire civilizations.